Hey, what's up, everybody? Before we get to the interview, I just want to take a quick moment and talk about today's sponsor, which is Splice. Now, many of you who are producers, you most likely have probably already heard of Splice, but if you haven't heard of it, let me go ahead and just give you a quick little breakdown of what Splice is. Splice is the digital music platform evolving the way people create, connect, and collaborate with access to sounds, software, and inspiration. It's designed to keep creators in their flow and to make the best production tools affordable, lowering barriers to entry. Now, if that sounded a little confusing, let me just go ahead and tell you that it is the best damn thing I have found as a producer. Essentially, Splice, they sell all kinds of musical stuff. You can find all kinds of plugins, all kinds of instruments on that platform, but the way that I discovered them was through their large, and I mean large and extensive sample libraries. You can find all kinds of samples there from all kinds of artists. That's right. Many known artists will go on there and create their own sound design packs so that you can use a lot of their creative ideas and manipulate it for your own creativity and projects that you've got going on. Now, let me tell you, the pricing is absolutely phenomenal, completely unmatched. For as little as $7.99 a month, you literally have access to so many samples. And honestly, it's one of those things that I don't know how I lived without I started using Splice, but now that I have it, I can't stop using it. You have access to samples like this, or even samples like this one. You may listen to that and you may think to yourself, wow, I'm not sure if I can create that on the fly. Well, guess what? You don't have to anymore. Now you can use Splice whenever you have a creative idea and you just need to drag and drop something real quick and manipulate it to whichever way that you want to use it. Splice is going to be your go-to. And trust me, once you try it once, you're never going to want to not use it ever again. So make sure to go ahead and check out Splice at splice.com. You can also Google Splice Sounds. Basically, anytime you Google their name, it will direct you to the website. So that's Splice Sounds. Make sure that if you're a producer or you're somebody who just wants to get up and start making some dope music, get Splice today. All right, what is up, everybody? Eddie Barco here once again, your favorite host. And let me just start off by saying that I am beyond ecstatic for my upcoming guest because this is a man who's incredibly talented, a musician who I've admired for quite a bit and who's always got creative ideas. But there's the list of why I'm excited is incredibly long. And if I sat here and listed every single thing, I would honestly waste the whole entire conversation. And he's got such a tight schedule that I have to make sure I keep to time. I mean, he's painting, he's being an adult, but he's also got a very tight schedule. So I got to make sure I got to keep tabs on the time. I have my man here, Misha Raining, a.k.a. Spaghetti, joining me for a great conversation. My man, how are you doing today?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Eddie. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I mean, just as a little...
Thanks for that beautiful introduction. That was. I'm sitting here smiling. I had no idea. That's awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction.
No problem. See, that's my job. It's my job to make sure that you know how great you actually are, even though you probably already know. It's my job to remind you and get this conversation going.
No.
Humility and everything. I absolutely love it. Before we even started talking, he mentioned to me that he's currently painting the room for his daughter. You're painting it pink. How's that going?
I'm just getting started and I'm already sweating for two reasons. It's very hot in this room, and also I feel like I'm gonna mess up so bad. Even though it's if you look at the wall, it looks like it's an easy job. It's just like a square. But it has, the edges are very curved. So I got to set like a limit with tape until where I'm going to paint. And that's where I'm a bit nervous about, because like, it's going to be like sketchy.
Jesus, man.
It's going to be not many straight. If you know my music, then you kind of know what I mean. Like my music is all over the place, and like, it's very,
well, that's what makes it interesting, man. That's the fact that it just goes all over the place, and somehow it makes sense, but it goes all over the place still. I think that's the best kind of music, in my opinion.
Well, that's what I hope, that it makes sense to listeners sometimes. I mean, maybe not per se that my music is complicated, but I do know that I have a bit of a, how do you say that? A bit of a sloppy style every now and then. I'm not very I'm sure we're going to be talking about it more in this interview, but yeah, I'm not too much about detail and like nitpicky. And yeah, a lot of people like that in music, I guess. Like there's
Yeah. Can I ask you, do you find yourself that that's kind of how you are in your normal life, like with everything that you do you kind of just see the big picture and you're like, here's kind of how I'm going to do it, and you figure it out as you go, or are you more precise?
Absolutely. No, it's literally, I'm finding it out more and more as I'm growing up, getting older, being an adult, as you said. Yeah, at some point you evaluate more, or like you look back at you look at yourself trying to figure out how did I get here? And, and people always ask like, how do you define your style? How do you define this and that? And it's literally what you said. I think it's definitely me, my music. I'm very impatient in general. I like to get things done quick, short attention span, and you can see that in my work. You can see that in a lot of stuff that I do. I'm not too nitpicky, and I kind of hate it about myself lots of times. I wish
Really?
I wish I was more critical to myself about production, technical aspects, and also in daily life. Like, oh, why didn't I paint that line a little straighter? Or why didn't I take the time to do it a second time, or something like that? And that's both. It has its pros and cons. It has its good and bad sides. Because yeah, okay, I can basically. It goes on in if I used to make a song a day. I would produce really fast, and that's just what I love doing. And a lot of my producer friends are struggling hard with getting stuff done. Finishing tracks is like the hardest part about making music for most people, I think. And I didn't have a problem with that. And I didn't have a problem with that. And it kind of gave me a kick to see everybody like struggling with that. I'm like, this is easy for me. But that goes for, you sacrifice a bit of audio quality sometimes. Not audio quality.
Yeah.
Just, technical, nerdy stuff inside productions.
Well, if you don't mind me then, because I love the way you think, and there's so much that I wanna kind of explore, because it's very, and before we even like super dive into it, my personal opinion is I feel like the messiness, in my opinion, like the way that you approach your music, and it's very free flowing, and you're not necessarily so picky, but you're conscious enough to be able to finish a track. That is very, very challenging. I speak from experience because I'm a producer and drummer as well, so I kind of know a little bit on both sides how complex it can get and how easy it can be to like fall in that rut, to like listen to your music and be like, it's not ready yet. And then you kind of just keep revisiting. You find yourself in that spot over and over and over again. And at some point, you just got to let it go. And I feel like mastering that ability is really, really hard. But if I'm understanding you correctly, you've always kind of had it.
Yeah, exactly. And I also want to add to that this doesn't apply to everyone.
Right.
You don't have to be a fast producer. You don't have to, have that personality or like that quality that you are able to finish stuff in time, or because there are a lot of very good producers that take months to produce one song, and then it's absolutely mind-blowing and really, really good, and that's fine. That's just how they work. And so that's why I always it's just for me. Yeah, it works for me. And I'm actually a drummer too, by the way. And maybe
you are?
Well, as a kid, I was, and it's still a dream of me to ever have a house big enough to fit a drum kit in.
Man! We have so much to talk about. Oh, okay.
Very not possible at the moment. I live in a very tiny apartment.
Maybe get some electric kits, man.
Yeah, one of my brothers has one, and it's obviously not the same. It's a totally it's a totally different thing. But you do get to hold the sticks and like kick out all that aggression and like drum along with music, and that's cool. At least you can perform the actions. And right now I can't do that on anything. But yeah, on a MIDI keyboard, it's not the same.
It's not the same, man. That's
No.
fantastic that you were a drummer. Like, did you stop playing drums after a while, or did you just kind of transition into other things? Like, was that something that you really tried to pursue at all, or was it just for fun?
It was just something that I grew up in a very musical family, a Christian family with lots of kids, and
Wow.
most of us played instruments. Like we would play. I grew up like in evangelical church, if I say
Me
that.
too. Me too.
You did? Okay. Well, you know that we had like a band on stage.
Yep.
It's with like the worship music, and there were lots of Sundays where the band was like my entire family. We were like a big part of the whole music side of the church.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was cool. So I grew up in that world, and so I played a bunch of instruments, just like the basics. But drumming was my main thing because my one of my brothers had a drum kit, and but later when I grew up and when I was like 11, 12, 13, I guess, I became more conscious of. I started feeling really bad for my neighbors. And as a kid, a kid doesn't care, right? A kid has no
Right.
idea. Is aware of noise complaints. And I grew up in a pretty small house in a neighborhood with.
And you're from
It's
the
very,
Netherlands,
very
right?
packed.
From the Netherlands?
I am. Yeah, I'm from the Netherlands. I grew up in a small town, but in a part of the town where there's lots of houses, lots of very kind of packed, and at some point I started feeling bad. I was playing drums less and less, and at some point my dad sold the drum kit, because we needed money, and I wasn't using it a lot. But yeah, that's kind of how it ended. But it's like not too long after that, I picked up. I kept on making music on a keyboard that we had in the house. Recording 5 tracks on a keyboard where you can do 5 different sounds.
Yeah.
And then I discovered FL when I was about 15, 16, and then that's kind of how I rolled
Wow.
into it. Yeah, that's how I went from like real instruments to later on it just became electronic.
That's fantastic, man. You know what's interesting? It's kind of crazy that we have a very similar story. For me, I grew up evangelical Pentecostalist, and I'm from Latin America, so I'm Guatemalan. And Hispanics can be very, very devout religious people. I think I've talked about this with other artists too. And yeah, music is a huge part of when you grow up in the evangelical circle or whatever. And for me, I really embraced the musical side of it in terms of like instrumentation. So I didn't have a drum set growing up either. Or rather, I never had a drum set because my family never could afford one. So I learned how to play on like the typical pots and pans kind of thing. But what's interesting is that at some point I decided to pursue music, and I decided to study jazz, and like I went the traditional musician route, I guess you can say. But you at some point discovered production, and you embraced that route, and it worked incredibly well for you. I'm wondering, how was it that you actually discovered like FL Studio? I'm assuming you're talking about FL Studio, right? When you said FL?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
How did you come across that? Like, did you watch like a YouTube video that someone suggested to you, or like how did you transition from being just a normal like church musician or hobbyist or whatever you want to call it to then being really interested in production? Because it's a completely different world, you know?
It is, and to be honest, I can't remember the moment I found FL or something. That's gotta have happened by just Googling music software. I mean, I tried Cakewalk and what was it? Some other music stuff at the time too. But FL had a demo that was like you could do quite a lot in it except for saving, I believe.
Yeah.
And so I would just record it in a crazy. I remember recording it to tape in some way. I might have actually put a microphone in front of the computer speakers. I remember doing stuff like that. I would just like go through the house, find all like cables and stuff that we had for our music, for like Sunday church things. Anyway, that's all not important. But I was always making beats, like hip hop kind of beats, just for fun on my dad's keyboard that was in the living room. And at some point I wanted to record those songs, like keep those songs, because you had to like delete your 5 tracks to make a new song.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. And that's why I needed software. So I rolled into FL, but I learned really slowly. I wanted FL mostly to just get my music on that keyboard, like on the computer, because I didn't know how to make computer music. I wasn't into that at all. That came later, like a little later, when I guess when hip hop, like Dutch hip hop, was having like some glorious years around the time.
Really?
With artists like Opgezwollen and Typhoon. I don't know if you've ever heard of these names,
No,
but
actually.
these,
No.
like the label Top Notch in Holland is a big hip hop label, and they were like booming at the time. And I was one of those kids that was looking at those videos, like, oh man, I want to do that too. My main influence in the very beginning was Delic, which is the producer of Opgezwollen, Dutch hip hop group, and I was madly, I say it, copying him.
You're
Um,
influenced by him.
yes. He used a lot of gypsy samples and like Eastern European kind of samples, and that was like
Oh.
kind of new, in at least in Dutch hip hop. Very different beats, not your standard gangster 808 stuff. He used like real instruments and like gypsy music from like old tapes and stuff. Very cool. Anyway, some friends in my town were, there's always a bunch of kids that want to be rappers, right? And I made a few beats for them, and started recording some stuff with friends, just for everything, still for fun. Like I never got paid anything or whatever. But that's I guess how I got interested in like actually producing electronically. So
Yeah. That's
um,
fantastic, dude. Like the whole gypsy music thing, that's actually something that I'm really curious about. I'm not gonna say that I know a lot about gypsy music because I grew up mostly here in in North America, South America, North America. But with gypsy music, I think my first ever introduction to that was the Gypsy Kings. You probably know who they are
yeah, yeah.
from Spain, I think. And so like they've got a lot of that. I don't know how you would call it. Like it's influenced. You might know this more, and I'm hoping you could educate me a little bit. But I believe like when you're talking about gypsy music, it's mostly like a combination of European and Middle Eastern influences, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, and you've got that what would you call it, like Roomba groove, or like it kind of goes like that, right? Something like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it goes way crazier. But I think what spoke for me mostly was the melodic part about this. But yeah, their drums, like the tambourines that they use and all that stuff, and the rhythms, the grooves, like what you're saying. It was always it was just so different from church, I guess, from all the
Yeah.
music that I grew up in. And it was not, I also kind of wanted to, I wasn't too much into really gangster stuff and like the evil, worldly music. But then I discovered that, and it was, well, through that hip hop group, not per se like directly gypsy. But yeah, and my first beats had a lot of those pitch bending and like guitars and sometimes even flamenco kind of influences. But yeah,
Ooh, I love flamenco. Flamenco is a beautiful, beautiful style.
it is. It's so complicated though once you dive
Yeah.
into. You're a drummer. Like I don't know if you've ever got a hand on if you ever got that counting right, because
The
I
the 12
I
over
can't.
8, I think it's like a 12 over something. By the way, I'm not trying to nerd out here, guys, but like for some of you guys who might not know a little bit of like music notation or counting, in general, music is pretty much straightforward where you count like 1, 2, 3, 4 in general. But depending on the
Mhm.
style in different cultures, they kind of mess around with that system where it throws you off completely. And flamenco is one of
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, in flamenco they will even go. It even changes through the song, I believe, sometimes. Like it'll be 12/8, and then there'll be like two bar. No, they're not called bars. I don't know how they call them. Like there'll be like a section where it's 7/8, or I don't know, whatever the hell they use. But it's very very interesting and very it gives you headaches.
It
I've never
does.
been like, once again, I like it. I like to check it out how, and like I'm fascinated by it, but then again I'm also very impatient in trying to learn it. So just like
me too, man.
I'm just gonna take a little bit of influence from there and then put it into my music. It got I did it less over the years, but that's definitely how it's started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you something? Because you're definitely piquing my interest in some areas here. So, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, and I'm not trying to hijack the conversation, but I think you might relate to this. I ended up studying jazz quite a bit when in like my teenage years, the early adult life, and I got into that world pretty heavily. And the one thing that I found that happened to me over time, and I think this happens to most musicians, not all musicians, but definitely a lot, where because a style like jazz is so complicated, and again, relating to like flamenco and other styles of music that are really complicated, there's so many rules and there's so many ways to do it the right way that after a while, you kind of, well, at least in my opinion, my creativity got a little blocked because I was so focused on this is the right way of doing it that after years of doing that, I couldn't really break. At least it took me a while to break away and become a little more free. Which again, that's something I get from your music, and so it's interesting that you also know about that. But I'm wondering, like, did that ever affect you? Like, did you ever, as you were learning how to produce and learning about music, did you ever get caught up in like how the rules work and I need to do it the right way, or did you just like never care?
That is something more of really like recently, and by recently I mean this year, the last year, maybe the last 3-4 years even. Like the bigger you get, become as an artist, the more eyes you get on you, the more comments you get at your work. When you see all of that happen, you realize I'm getting critique from people that know stuff, and also a lot of people that don't know anything and that they just blurt out stuff. But at some point, you feel like that you have to be at a certain level, that you have to do that right, and that has to be right because all those people have to like it. Just that's what comes with becoming a bigger artist. And I didn't struggle with that at all in the first years when I think my like rising or like my career started popping off. I didn't care at all about comments on my music, and I just cared about getting all that creativity out. I just wanted to make melodies and like bounce them out and put them for free on SoundCloud, and that's it. And then nowadays, lately, I'm like, of course, more interested in the technical stuff. There's so many cool plugins to figure out, so many cool sample packs to use, that at some point, like, okay, if I want to get this bass done or that certain sound done, then it's cool. You have to do it like this and this and this and that because that's how it sounds good. And then at some point, you start losing the overview and like creativity. I believe. I think that I got less creative over the years because I went way more into into plugins, like a plugin for that. Oh, there's a cool new plugin for that part. And I got lost in it. And now in the last months, I've been deleting more plugins than that I got new ones.
Really?
Because I noticed that, like even Serum, which is like one of the most used plugins at the moment in my, my little EDM niche and my little world. I've hardly used it because I'm like so used to my Massive and my Harmor and my like old school plugins.
Really?
And I've noticed that with myself that I prefer to have a small production kit to work in, and that's just like a few plugins that I know really well and that I know how to use, and that's it. But like it almost feels like pressure on you from that everybody uses that and that technique and that plugin, and that you feel like you have to do it because that's the production level and quality nowadays. Yeah, sometimes you can get stuck in that for sure. If I'm like stuck with writing, what I often do is go listen through my old songs, and listen to old projects or like unfinished projects, and I keep thinking to myself like, wow, how did I even do this? How did I have the balls? How did I have the balls to do this? Like I wasn't even mid side compressing. I wasn't even doing
Wow.
the side chain like this and that. But I was making like just cool melodies and putting them out on the internet. And now like I'm get way too lost in the whole technical stuff, and like I'm producing way less fast. Because when I was telling you earlier that I was producing really quickly, that's something of the early days. Like I definitely am not producing fast anymore. That has to do with my like home situation, like being a father nowadays and stuff. But also this, like what you're just saying, um, about feeling like getting stuck in rules and stuck in
Like the way it's supposed to be.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
and also of course it's a huge difference now if you look at the amount of sample packs, like high quality sample packs that are out there and plugins that make so many actions in your producing software like so much easier, like lazier almost. Like back in the day, I didn't have all of that, and it was just like do it with what you got.
Yeah, well, I mean, there
what
weren't
you
that
got.
many samples back in the days. You had to
Right,
just make it.
yeah, I was just so limited, and I guess that really helped with being creative more. Like that was just all I had. There were not too many sample packs. I didn't have money for sample packs or whatever. I had cracked software. Everything was cracked for
Me
years.
too, man. Me too.
Of course, everything was cracked, and I always thought to myself, yeah, once I can afford it, I will buy everything. But that took a long time.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
you know
just,
what's.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, just what I think, just what I just said. Like limitation often generates more creativity because
Yeah.
you have to do something with what you got there. Like go crazy with only those three elements instead of you can also have a million elements that you have to do something with, and it's just too much. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask you, because what you're saying is actually very, very wise. And the reason why I bring it up is because, you know, in my experience of talking to so many artists like you, this is a period of time that many people come across at some point. There are a few exceptions where they never reach that point, and that's very rare. But I do think as a creative person, not even just musician, like if you're a painter or whatever,
Yeah.
there is a point in your career where you just get, I'm not going to say blocked, but there's so much, it's so different from when you first started, and assuming that you have some success, now you've got a fan base or people who are expecting a certain
Right.
type of product, and there is a natural desire as a human being to just want to do something different, usually all the time. And I guess the question that I have for myself and for you, and I'm not even sure if there is an answer, is there a way that you balance that? Because it seems like you're changing. It seems like that you're aware of some of the stuff that's happening to you in terms of, like, you know, having expectations and blah, blah, blah. But you're also making conscious choices to get rid of all the clutter. You got rid of many, many plugins. And now, do you find yourself in a place where you feel more balanced? Like you feel like, all right, I'm back to my basics. I'm going to go ahead and approach things the way I used to. Or are you doing it in a new hybrid way? I don't know. I'm just curious.
So I definitely have come to a point where I am more aware of that. Yeah, like what the problem is sometimes with being stuck. But I also have to say that daily life has a big influence here too.
You're a
I have a
dad
daughter.
now, right?
I have a daughter now who is almost 1.5 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you, and that's amazing and stuff. But like production wise, it leaves me with a lot less time, and I am someone who is a how you call it, like a zone worker, I guess, a flow worker. I really like to sit down, and in one session I can put out a song. But if I get interrupted in that, then I'm like completely out of the zone. If I open that project a second time, I might as well just start. I might as well just start a new one. Often I will just never finish it. It's all in one go, or nothing, or it's just gone. So yeah, that has become difficult in daily life. But I produce a lot on Never Say Die, and that's kind of where I am sort of exclusively nowadays with. And of course they have their own sound, and they have I've definitely made music at home that is not gonna be released by them, but that I do love to make. And so I do have to make that. I have to balance that as well. That I have like a heavier dubstep side, which is Never Say Die. But I also have my old school. A big part of my fan base likes my like more old school sound, which was more melodic, a little more quirky, more cheesy. Um, and I still love making that, but at some point I had to make choices to go like because I would never say die now, so I got to make those heavier dubstep things. But
and Never Say Die is your label, right? I'm just clarifying.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I'm basically exclusive with them at the moment. That's not always gonna be, but like I'm definitely doing a bunch of releases with them.
Yeah.
And I get those questions a lot of like, when is my old style coming back? And like, I'm working on those things, but also a lot for myself, just because I like making them and not even for releasing. But yeah, I mean, that's something I struggle with. Because there's a certain expectation from my fan base that likes the heavy stuff and like a part of the fan base that likes the more melodic, cheesy stuff.
Yeah. But yeah. Can I ask you something?
I like to make it all, but I gotta make a balance of that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Can I ask you something when it comes to excuse me, when it comes to being a dad? Because, and by the way, congratulations. I know I said that earlier, but that's very much that's warranted because it's a beautiful thing. Like when you can transition from to having a family and you're making something that you love. Can I ask you something? Just between you and me. Or I mean, I guess it depends if this is something that's actually like that's gonna come out. But when it comes to like having a family, and when it comes to being able to balance music and having a family, did the choice of having a family, did that ever like cross your mind in terms of like this might get in the way of my career? And by the way, this is just completely personal. I'm just asking because I have recently had a conversation very similar to this to another person who is in a, forget the name, but they're in a very decent, successful band, up and coming, and they made the choice to have a family, and it was very much a conscious choice of like family comes first and everything else is whatever. But for you, it seems like you're doing your best to balance both evenly well. Do you feel like, honest to God, like it's something that you can possibly do well, or do you feel like when it comes to like building up a career, for you specifically, is it better to just focus on music until you have something solid like you did and then have a family, or is it doable to be able to grind and have a family? I'm just curious.
Well, right. Well, it's this is not the same for everyone, because it depends on your production speed and on where you live, your age, how long you've been doing it, and financially how you are. It's definitely, if you're gonna start a family, you gotta be stable financially, stable in your career before you're gonna do it. I definitely recommend to people who are building up their career to not start a family until you are really, really, really comfortable in that, like time wise, financially, production wise, all of that. Because it takes up a lot of your time, especially in the beginning. Because like I stayed home for a few months. I took some time off of touring to be there for my kid and for my wife, obviously. And at some point you got to roll back in, and then those few weeks or months out felt like such a long time for me. I like that was a bit scary. I felt like almost having to do it over again. At some point, like once you're touring again, you get the hang of it again. But we definitely planned this way. Like I've always said, we wanted to start a family at some point, and we said, okay, we feel like it's getting to a point that it's that we could plan it. And so my wife came with me on some tours as well. Like first we wanted to see as much of the world as possible, like touring together.
Smart move. That's pretty smart.
Yeah, which was really fun. And that was cool. And at some point, uh, we said, yeah, we can do it now. And now that I have a kid, I often think to myself, damn it, I wish I'd waited a little longer or whatever. But that's more production wise, But now also COVID hit, and now it's really crazy times, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I can't even.
I mean, this
Yeah,
whole
I
year
can't.
has just been bizarre for everybody, regardless of whether you have a family, you
Yeah.
have a career, whatever. This year has just been insane.
So it was kind of at the same time, it's a huge blessing as well for me that I'm home. I've been home because of the coronavirus, and that's why I'm daily seeing my daughter, which probably wouldn't have happened if I was
Regardless,
touring.
yeah.
Because I had to stop like halfway my tour in the US. We had to cancel 11 shows, like postpone / cancel. My wife and my kid were there too, by the way, in the US, but it's not the same thing. Like we would more. They would stay at the place, and then I would play some shows, and then come back to wherever we're staying at that moment. So like temporarily just staying in the US. But before that, you got to plan. The way you got to balance it is probably touring together with a baby is very hectic and not recommendable.
Yeah, I imagine, man.
It's just too hectic with like luggage and planning travel. As soon as something has to be changed, or like stuff goes wrong, then it's just like a major disaster when you have your kid and your wife there. When you're not in your own country, and you're gonna be away from home a lot.
Yeah.
It already sucked when I had to leave for a few weekends or a few weeks for touring, and then once I had a baby, it was even worse. Like I leave my baby for a weekend or 2 weekends. But at some point, we planned it as I would play 2-week shows in the US and then be home for at least 2 weeks as well, and that kind of went. That's how it went. Just.
Well, it's like trial and error. You're trying to figure out what happens because what will work because you have a brand new baby, you have this family. What's your kid's name, by the way, if I can ask?
Christine.
Beautiful name.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm curious now that you're a dad and that you are experiencing these brand new things, which, by the way, I'm very grateful that you're being honest and open because this isn't just unique to you. Like having a family is unique and different for everybody, and everyone's going to experience a shift no matter what they're doing, whether they're touring, whether they're having a job, whether they're whatever they may be doing. Having a kid is always going to change your life forever. And I'm curious for you, having a family and being in this new place in your life, do you find yourself being inspired by the same things when it comes to making music? Because I know that your schedule's different now. You're working hard to figure out that balance. But in terms of what inspires you to make music, I imagine that part of it might be different, but I could be wrong. But I'm curious now that you have a child, and now that you have Christine, do you find yourself being like inspired and wanting to make a different shift in your music, or do you still find yourself in the same place? Which both are fine. Sometimes I find that having a kid helps musicians or makes musicians think of different things to write about or produce. I'm curious if that's happened to you.
To be honest, not too much. I don't think I changed. That is not necessarily the change of having a daughter now. That I want to switch things up a little. I think in general, I've come to a point in my career that I'm looking back to the beginning of my career where I made more melodic stuff, and I'm like really, itching to make more melodical things instead of like the whole time heavy. And probably, it probably adds as well that now that I have a baby, you start that feeling of being a father is amazing, and it gives you like a new perception, perspective, on life, and it's really a throwback feeling to me for some reason.
Yeah.
Like I'm older and I'm looking back on my young self making music, and like it's kind of nostalgic. So
Really?
I mean that helps a little. However, I think I had that already in like this year and the last year, and a little bit before that. Not per se the baby. Well, what the baby also helps is samples. We're watching. There's like we have cartoons and like animation movies on all day, And there's so many cool samples in those things, and those are really inspiring for for some
Really? So what, are
for
you
some
sitting in
music.
front of the TV with like a, are you sitting in front of the TV with like an H6 recorder just recording random samples from the TV?
Oh no, I just like write down the minute in my notes, and then later I'll go to Netflix or wherever I heard it on YouTube, like Trolls or Frozen, this sample at this minute, and those kind of things. So that's cool. You know, that she helped with finding me some cool pre-drop vocals and things. But yeah.
That's pretty cool, man. No, I love that. Here's the thing, and I just met you today, but obviously I can already tell a couple things, and it seems like you're in love with being a dad and this whole life, and that you're very much open to trying to figure out, you know, how to rebalance things and all of that sort. I'm generally curious when it comes to your career from going here on out, and this is a broad question, but I am curious ideally how do you see yourself like growing from this point, because you've done a great job of getting to where you're at, and you've experimented in the past. You kind of started off as an amateur, and you clearly and very quickly became a professional, and now you have the style that you're known for. Now you're a father, and you're in a different part of your life. I'm curious if you, I don't know, maybe you don't do this. I sometimes do this. I sometimes spend time just imagining where am I going to be in 5-10 years. I imagine a lot of people do, but I'm curious for you, since you have this career that's pretty strong. Do you sit there and ever envision how do you want it to look like in the next 5-10 years, or not at all?
Yeah, I definitely do, and I definitely still have some goals and some ambitions that I want to, see fulfilled. Because I'm still the last tour that I was doing as well was like the biggest one yet. Every tour that I'm doing is bigger, is better.
You're going for it. You keep growing, which I love. I love that you're pushing.
Yeah, we're still in a career shoot, like it should always be a growing line, right?
Right.
In general, like you wanna grow. If you don't want to grow anymore, then I don't know. Then
what's the point?
Kinda. Yeah. I mean, I will forever make music. Like let's not be wrong about that. I will forever make music, even if this career ends or fails, or if another virus is going to hit, whatever. I will keep on making music for myself, or I'll put them online. But touring and being a touring artist, I still have some plans. I mean, there's so many venues that I still want to play, or that I want to play the bigger room in, as that I did the other time. And a bus tour, my own bus tour eventually, that'd be like the ultimate goal. And I don't see that happen just yet. I'm nowhere there yet.
I'd say you're closer than you think.
Nah,
you're getting there.
I'm hearing and reading more about production costs and like all that. Well, doesn't matter right now. I don't think I'm there yet. And this Corona thing is not helping at all. Right. It's not helping anybody in the entertainment industry. So that's on a big hold. But touring, I'm still in a growing line with my career. Like I still want to keep on doing this and play wherever I can and wherever I can play, like worldwide, not just US, but worldwide. And I do think, like, especially also like in this crazy year of 2020 with Corona and all that stuff, you start thinking about what else could I do with my music, and I've started streaming a little bit at the moment. Like
Twitch?
Weekly, I do on Twitch, and YouTube. I do on both at the same time. I do feedback sessions, and I've done a little bit of production sessions too, but I'm not really comfortable with that yet. But feedback sessions have been going really well, and it's fun to do because I think for a lot of dubstep artists or EDM artists, they get lots of questions from aspiring producers, and it's really fun for yourself as well to give tips and to help out other producers, because it helps me. It helps myself sometimes too. So I would like to do this a little more, like teaching other people production, helping them out. Maybe I'll have to make a bit of money with this as well. I don't. Nobody knows how long all of this is gonna take.
Man, dude, the word is still out.
I'm good for the moment, but we definitely should start thinking ahead.
Some people think
And
that the music industry won't start opening up till like next September. Some people, that's how some people are
right,
estimating. It's crazy how it's like entertainment in general
yeah,
is at a standstill a lot longer than every other industry,
yeah, it
which is a
is.
shame. It's a shame.
I feel terrible for all these people that are not like I said, like I'm fine for myself for the moment, but not everybody is on that same like financially or like in their career at that point that they could handle this impact. And yeah, I feel really bad about that.
Yeah.
So
But for,
as I've said to some of my friends too, like as soon as I'm touring again, like I'm bringing, I want to bring all those artists that are struggling really hard right now. I want to, as soon as I can, I want to bring them onto my tours and get them shows, because that's pretty much all I can do, of course. And as soon as I can, I wanna do that.
well, I'm glad that
Yeah,
you're thinking about that stuff because that shows where your priorities are at. And I'm glad that that's where your mind goes.
absolutely. Once I'm back on the road, I want to have. We've been doing it more and more, uh, like bringing support acts, which most of the time are guys I know pretty well. Not always. Sometimes they're completely new, and I like to bring out new talent, new artists.
Yeah.
So
Is there a new
yeah.
talent? And just out of curiosity, is there a new talent that you brought on the road or that you're listening to right now that is relatively new, but that in your eyes is fresh, that you're like surprised or very inspired by their new style?
There's tons, yeah. For example, Lux or Lux is a crazy talented dubstep producer. He's
Shout out to Lux.
yeah, I don't know if you know his music. I don't understand how he is not blowing up like crazy. I mean, I know that most people know his name by now. He's gotten some shout outs from like real big people, and that's cool. But he deserves way more attention and way more spotlight. Um, Let me see, Tracy is a cool name. Papa Khan, I think people are noticing him more and more. Yeah, there's a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you keep. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, there's just like this melodic sound in dubstep that is kind of getting bigger, which is cool. I think a big part of it is because of not shows not happening, so people are more at home. So you're gonna listen more to listening music, more melodic stuff instead of like the heavy stuff. So this is cool for dubstep that there's like a new melodic, um, more easier to listen to, like style coming through.
I
Yeah.
love that. And are you taking advantage of that in your opinion because you were very much melodic when you started? I'm curious, like, are you embracing that new style that's kind of coming out, or are you still just doing your own thing?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I'll still do my own thing. I'm trying not to jump the wagon too much on like there are certain techniques that are being used that are trending, and I don't like to do that too much, like follow the trends per se. So I have kind of my own cheesy melodic style that I'm known for, and it's a great time to be putting that out again. And I can't say too much. I can't give any details, but there's definitely like stuff on the way that a big part of my fan base is gonna be very happy with.
I love that. I love that. I'm anticipating for that. You know, I was just about to ask you as we start wrapping things up here because I know you've got a very busy schedule. I was about to ask.
I wish I could say I had a very musical, cool schedule, but it's like painting pink walls. But
Hey,
yeah.
live schedule, busy music schedule. It's all the
Oh
same.
man,
It's
it's sometimes more stressful, for sure.
well, I was about to ask you like what you have in the works. It seems like you've got a lot of stuff getting ready to release in the near future, but it might seem like a lot of it might still be hush hush. Is there anything that you are open to share of something you've got in the works that might be cool for your fans to know?
There's a lot in the works, for sure. And I mean, I have not been quiet about that. I've had some. I've had a writer's block in the last months, and I kept going in and out of it, along with so many other producers. Right, a lot of people are uninspired because of everything that's happening in the U.S. and
Yeah.
and in the world. Yeah, it doesn't help. For some are thriving. Some people are thriving in this, but a lot of us are not thriving in this. Like
Yeah.
depression almost is.
Well, everybody's different, man. And sometimes having to
Yeah,
be cooped up at home, that doesn't help. A lot of people get inspired by being
yeah,
out and about on tour or like seeing people. It's a very
yeah,
different mindset. Like myself
yeah.
included, I'm very inspired by being around people, but then being stuck at home for months, I've been okay, but I can definitely see that there's some people who could struggle from this. It's interesting.
Yeah, I love being at home. Like it's not even a huge difference for me, but it's of course different when you have to, and
Yeah.
when you're it's not the same thing. But what I was going to say, so at the moment, what I'm doing a lot is like trying to finish up all projects because I've been really struggling with coming up with like creative new ideas, and I have so many unfinished projects laying that I can finish. So why not take this time to try to do that? So I'm trying to get into a zone, into a vibe of wrapping up tracks that are laying, because like it doesn't really feel like me. I'm more like empty project, and I'll bump out a tune in a session. But now I have to figure out. I have to figure out a project, how everything's connected. Okay, and now wrap it up. Like this has to be added. That has to be fixed. So a lot of stuff that is in the works is like old songs that need to see daylight because they're just too cool to be sitting on my computer. And then again, I'm also working on collabs, and I don't think I can. No, I don't.
I understand. I understand.
I shouldn't say names because
No, I get it. I get it.
at least two are not my own. Like they'll be on someone else's release, so like that wouldn't be cool to say that. But yeah, I mean that is all I can say.
Got it. Well, you definitely got me excited, man. And
I'm hitting 200K followers on SoundCloud soon, and I want to do something for that too. So that's
I'm anticipating that, dude. I mean, Misha, I am really grateful and super honored that I got the opportunity to speak with you. Honestly, an hour is not enough to talk to you. You're a very creative person, very fun, humble person to talk to.
Thank you so much, man. I had a great time with you as well. Thank you so much. This flew by. I am looking at the clock, and yeah, you're right.
Yeah, when the conversations are good, believe me, an hour sounds like a long time, but it's not. It really isn't. But you know what? I am grateful that you were honest and you were open. You shared what you cared about. You shared where you're currently at. Personally, I feel like your career is still ripe for blowing up way bigger than you even think. Because I love what you do, man, and I love what you're about. And I think it's coming for you. And obviously, this year is a bit of a weird year for everybody. But for you, for Misha, for Spaghetti, I think there's a lot more in the works. It's coming, and I can, after speaking with you, I definitely know that for a fact.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I'm trying to make a hybrid of old Spag and new Spag, as a lot of people like to call it. And I think it's really time. I think it will hit really well. Yeah, okay, that's all I'm gonna say.
Well,
Yes.
thank you so much, my man, Misha. Thank you so much. I appreciate your
Thank you,
time.
Eddie.
You're quite the person, and you're pretty cool, man.
Thank you so much, Eddie. You are too.